longer have the pain that suffer your indifference. One sided soul, you won't hold. You can't have my darkness because yours will never show. One sided soul, give up your control. You can't have my darkness and you will never know. I reach out but I learn to keep my hands to myself. I cry out what pain is a secret no one should tell. Everyone's a stranger and I'm afraid to speak. One-sided soul, you won't hold. You can't have my darkness because yours will never show. One-sided soul, give up your control. You can't have my darkness and you will never know. You can have my darkness, I'll keep it for my own. You can share my suffering, I'll suffer all alone. You can have my darkness, I'll keep it for my own. You can share my suffering, I'll suffer all alone. One-sided soul, you won't hold.
Hello, y'all, and welcome to another episode of Who's Your Creator and What Do They Do? And this is the only time you'll actually hear me do the Arnold voice for this. Thank you so much to everybody who's joining me tonight. We have a very special guest for tonight's podcast. Oh, thank you so much, Mason. I really appreciate it. He's quite the YouTuber. He's been posting videos since early 2011 and a myriad of games. You might know him for his daily Eden runs from Binding of Isaac, even going back to the Flash days of Binding of Isaac, as well as other games such as Lobotomy Corporation and Darkest Dungeon, which was a game if I would not have discovered if it wasn't for him. You might also know about his co-ops with Northern Lion and Mathis, among others, and his live streams on Twitch TV. He's also good. He's also amazing in the band The Word of Lauder, which has 2 new recent tracks out, including Ash of Gods and Silliest Fracture, which can the two new recent ones can be found on YouTube, as well as his previous album, Fracture the Fault Line, which is currently available on Bandcamp. The one and only Sinvicta. Sinvicta, welcome to the cast.
Hey, thank you for having me. That is a very overly, I think, complimentary introduction. I don't think I'm going to be able to meet up to those standards now, but thank you very much for having me.
Long-time viewer, first-time caller. I've been watching you for a couple of years now, so it was around the same time when your binding of NLSS came out.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was a couple of years ago now. I think yeah, that came out in early 2016. Yeah, something like that.
Oh, I still laugh at it all the time. I mean, that was
good.
That was incredible. But anyway, so to the people in chat who are watching, we will be opening up some questions from Twitch chat towards the end of this cast. I've got a few questions to ask them in the general, but I want to kick it off with the same way that I do every podcast, Sinvicta. Tell us a little bit about your channel and how you got started.
Well, my channel got started, basically I was working in an IT job for about 2 years, and I didn't really like it. And I happened to like a guy by the name of Husky Starcraft, who I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. He used to post StarCraft 2 videos, and I was a big fan of his. And one day I started playing a game called Star Wars: The Old Republic, as off tangent as this may seem. It just so happened that I was playing, it was just by pure happenstance that Husky and I were playing on the same server, and he tweeted out one day that he made a guild, or whatever they called it back in the Old Republic. And I was like, oh dude, I'm on this server. Like, I'd love to play with Husky, just to even like maybe get a whisper. Like, and I'll never forget it. I took a screenshot the first time Husky and I ever interacted, just because I was like fangirling all over the place. Because you have to remember how huge he was back in the day. This was in his heyday. So I joined this guild, and flash forward about a month and a half after that, I ended up being the leader of the guild, because he was getting a lot busier with other stuff, and he just needed someone to take over for managerial purposes. And I was like, yeah, sure, I can do raids or whatever. And I casually mentioned to him on a stream one day that I also do PvP videos for World of Warcraft, and he checked them out, and he saw my editing skills, and he asked me to start working to help him out with editing here and there, like just doing some light edits for Nerdy Nummies, which was Rose's channel, and still is Rose's channel, of course, and some other projects. And we just became friends after that, because I kept in regular contact with him. And one day he said, your WoW videos are really entertaining. I think that you should do this full time. I think that if with my help, I think that you could maybe start a channel. People, I was getting a couple 100,000 views on warcraftmovies.com. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that'd be cool. I never really thought about it becoming a thing. But that was basically it. It was with Husky's encouragement and his direction that I got started, and I guess the rest is just history after that.
Nice. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And to kind of dovetail off of that, I mean, would you say that? Well, I guess I wouldn't say did you have any influences getting started? Was this just kind of like back with out with both barrels, let's do this? I mean, I think a lot of people probably hypothesize that NL was probably an influence to you later on down the pipe, but if anything, to me personally, I would think that it would be more into TB.
Yeah, I mean, I knew John from before I met Husky. I worked with John, TB, of course, for those who don't know. I worked with him in sort of like a background type of way with one of his shows called Shoutcraft, which a lot of people know of as, a huge StarCraft 2 tournament. And this was back in the early days when he was still doing WoW Radio. And from a connection there, John was working with another guy named Emperor of Clan 1G. I know him as Dave. And Dave is the one who introduced me and TB, and then I worked with them on a couple of things, and that's when I first met TB. This was years and years before I met Husky. And TB only really set I was just casually asking him about, I was like, how does YouTube work? And, because that thing was all new to me. And we just talked and talked, but I never really talked with him about YouTube until after I started doing YouTube, which I will always attribute to Husky more than really anyone else. you know, NL came much later.
Right.
I didn't even know who Northern Lion was until a couple years ago.
Gotcha.
But I mean, that's not to say that Ryan didn't influence the way. I mean, it was because of Ryan that I started to get the idea. I was like, you know what, if this guy can play it and people like to watch it, I was like, I bet I can play it. People probably won't like to watch it, but I like playing the game. I might as well record them anyway, you know. But from the beginning, it was all shaped by Husky, and then of course when John and I reconnected, that had a very big influence on how I basically not really conducted myself, but sort of kept the drive going. You know, the biggest thing that John ever told me was it's just consistency. You have to maintain consistency. It's almost like a catchphrase at this point. People have to be able to set their watch to your content. If they can do that, it doesn't matter what kind of stuff you're doing. You always have somebody who's going to have this sort of appreciation for their own anticipation of waiting for your stuff to come out. And that's the sort of core idea that I've always gone with. So, you know, putting in long hours, having 0 viewers and, you know, or 0 views. And, you know, it's all about, I do believe that you can do great things with consistency. And I also still equally believe that you can do great things by just sheer force of will. And that's sort of, those two factors combined is what I've really been driven by and sort of stick to as my creed from here on out, pretty much.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, going to kind of talk about the consistency. First of all, hey, Rocket, no worries, you're on time. And hey, X, good to see you, man. Hakai, it's good to see you. Great talent. Welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for the follow, Mason. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, because I mean, you upload your Isaac videos like clockwork. Like I get the notification right at 1 p.m., which is, you know, to kind of quote you, that's incredible.
Thank you, Thrall. Yeah, the Isaac stuff, which I'm sure we'll probably get into a little bit later. I've always sort of messed around and figured out. I've been trying to figure out what's the best time to release stuff, and it really came down to syncing with something that Husky told me a long time ago. He said you need to, if you end up finding something that really sticks with your channel, you should try to keep it consistent with a time, but it needs to be at a time that almost you're never going to be able to please everybody in this business. So find a time that works for you, but also a time that has a chance to hit the most people. So all the times that I release stuff now are dictated by Pacific time, even though I don't live in the West Coast. I live in Texas, so I'm Central.
Barbecue.
So so Central is 1 hour before Eastern and then 2 hours ahead of Pacific time. So I always have to offset that. And what I found out was that a lot of people like to tune in for lunchtime, and the Europeans like to tune in for dinner time. So which is right around noon, of course, for Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for you, you know, and that's about 10 a.m. for Pacific. But the thing is, for West Coasters and anyone on Pacific time, they usually queue up videos and watch it for their lunch break. So it all comes down to just scheduling around food, I guess. And that's the reason why that Isaac comes out at 12, because people love watching it, and I've always made sure that the afternoon slot was for the bigger of the two series going on at the time. So it just worked out great.
Yeah, because I always noticed that like the later ones would be more like aimed at RimWorld or Darkest Dungeon or Lobotomy Corporation, or even when you and Mathis did a couple of your co-ops.
Yep. The later afternoon slot is usually I don't want to say it's the second string, but I appreciate the second time slot, especially lately. It allows me to be a little bit more free with the game choice, you know. And one thing I learned very valuably, this is much later on in my YouTube career, was that the more video, just because you post a ton of videos does not necessarily mean people will watch them, and actually you're in danger of cannibalizing your own audience, because something that my fans told me on YouTube when I was doing 3 or 4 videos a day was that we don't have time to watch all of this, and you're not, you know, as established as I would love to hopefully one day be, you know, you have to remember that there's people who are already going to be watching a lot of other people on YouTube, especially these days. So you can't expect them to devote their entire day to watch everything you do, even if they're like the biggest fan of yours. If you put out 4 or 5 videos a day, no one's going to be able to watch all of that.
No, of course.
And it just comes down to time and utilizing your time. And I think that a big part of doing content creation is also respecting the time of your viewers as well, which is a lesson that I've only recently started to really understand since Isaac came out and is sort of blown up on my channel.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's a really good thing to point out because I mean, and to take it, I'm not trying to pimp myself out, of course, because this is all about you. I mean, when I
No, man, it's your show. Pimp yourself out all you want.
they can check out my YouTube channel and my Twitch channel as much as they want later on. I want to focus on you to kind of see if we can get more people to go check you out because, like I said, I've been a big fan of yours for several years now and was really nervous about interviewing you just because, like, okay, Sinvicta, big content creator, almost 60,000 subscribers. You just cracked 58. Congrats on that, dude.
No, thank you very much. I didn't know that. Was that today? I rarely ever look at the sub numbers, or I don't know.
Well, I mean, I was kind of
just awesome to hear.
I was doing some basic research just to kind of make sure that I was getting my facts straight. So I'm like, okay, when did he start doing YouTube? When did these things happen? If you couldn't tell, I majored in mass communication in college.
Yeah, no, it's hey, I appreciate the thoroughness. It's not something that a lot of people do these days anymore.
Well, somebody has to. But talking about time maintenance, like I said, because there was a time because I see so many different people as mass uploads and like around between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. all of a sudden my phone will blow up with like 20 different notifications and I'm like, holy hell. So and something I do besides Let's Plays are I do movie reviews, but since I'm a very low budget person, like I do everything in one sitting. So a 20-minute movie review would take me upwards of 2 hours. So between doing that and the games, I would just burn myself out.
Yep. And that's a danger that I think all content creators face at one point or another.
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
No, what I was going to say is you have to respect other people's time and your viewers' time, but you also have to respect your own time as well. It's very easy to feel like you're being overrun with you're just inundated with too many projects or too many thoughts that you're trying to articulate out to yourself to possibly turn into the content, for example, or turn into whatever have you. And to fit all that into one day overwhelms a lot of people. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And that's sort of, I think that's a big facet that a lot of content creators these days just don't realize. And I think, again, I don't consider myself a huge YouTuber. I don't consider myself a huge streamer. I never have. But I see a lot of my friends or even people I don't know, like I'm talking really big, established, millions of subscribers, YouTubers that I feel like they pin themselves into the corner. I'm not saying it's their imagination doing it, but I do think that you can run yourself ragged if you focus on the wrong parts of this job. And that's something that I've always been conscious about, which is why I've been I tell people I understand the YouTuber burnout. I understand how it could happen, but I've never personally experienced it because I know mentally where your energy should be focused at. You should be focused at getting work done. I've never thought that this is as work, so it's easier for me to do that, but also realize that you've got to respect yourself and your own time to where you're not prioritizing projects over your sanity. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up these days, even the bigger YouTubers, where they just feel like I've got to create. It's like, you don't have to create constantly, and while it is true, and I don't want to keep going on to this tangent, but while it is true that the nature of the beast for this industry is that you have to maintain consistency to be relevant. That doesn't mean you have to maintain 24/7 consistency. In my opinion, anyway. I mean, maybe that's one of the things that holds me back from being a big YouTuber is that laid back idea. But I see a lot of friends and people that I care about that sort of run themselves crazy. And it was something that bothered John a lot too. He struggled a lot with he's got all these ideas, sort of like an Elon Musk type idea or two, that he always wants to float new series. And like, I would tell him, I was like, you should, it doesn't have to be all crazy. Like you can take a chill, like one step at a time sort of idea. But you know, and again, not to single out TB, but I just see a lot of people that do the same thing. They've got all these ideas and they feel like they always have to consistently evolve themselves to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't think that either my brain isn't wired like that, or it just doesn't affect me like that. I've never really experienced the creator burnout. Even though people say that I have experienced that, but I think they're just catching me on a day like today where all the videos were done after I was up for 36 plus hours and I sound delirious on the microphone.
Dude, trust me, I think I haven't slept in probably upwards of 36 hours as well. I'm just like, oh my God.
It's terrible.
It's brutal. I mean, I did catch a nap earlier with Smokey and the Bandit playing in the background.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Perfect napping ambiance.
The Bandit is snowman going 80 down the highway with Sally Field riding shotgun.
Yep.
That's a classic. Well, let's actually talk about Isaac then, since we were kind of going over all the games and the uploads and stuff. When did you feel like Isaac was kind of becoming your mainstay?
I never thought that Isaac was going to be the game. I've always dreamed about it, and it didn't really hit me until I had the run that changed everything and really changed my life. As hokey as it sounds, wasn't even supposed to be anything special. I got the D100 and I D100 into Sacred Heart and Godhead, which is an extremely rare, what was thought of back then as a completely impossible combo, because back in that time, Godhead and Sacred Heart were exclusive from each other. So if you got one, you could not get the other by any means at all, other than re-rolling into them.
Right.
And I re-rolled it, and I was like, we got Sacred Heart and Godhead. And I stopped there and looked at that. In my mind, it didn't really kick in that it was anything special. It wasn't until after I got done recording that episode. Originally, I was just going to say just another D100 run. Like I wasn't going to bring any sort of attention to that specific combo. But the more I thought about it, and because I knew that they were loot exclusive from each other, I said, you know what? Maybe I should try to go a little bit more clickbaity with this one, just to experiment with. Because I really loathe clickbait. I really loathe the big red arrow that points to stuff on. You know, it's so cliche, but the fact of the matter is, it's just the beast of YouTube that just it brings eyes, and that's the number one job of a thumbnail, was to bring the eyes to your video, especially if you're someone who's trying to expand out and grow a new audience. Yeah. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to try it out. Let's just see. And then that video became my number one most watched video. That wasn't the super fight video I did with TB and the co-op lounge. And from there on out, I saw a meteoric rise as far as Isaac is concerned. And that was when I really truly felt, I was like, okay, this is the time to strike. Isaac is absolutely exploding on my channel, and this is what I wanted. Now, you know, how am I going to wield this? Like, this is a crucial moment where I can directly affect the fate of the channel by what I do with the Eden streak and what I do with the next couple of videos, because I'm going to have an unprecedented, again, for a channel my size, an unprecedented amount of people coming out and trying to figure out who this guy is. Why is this video on my recommended tab? So it wasn't, and to answer your question in this overly verbose way,
it's all good.
It was after I saw that video cross like 50,000 views for the first 50,000. I said,
holy hell.
Okay. I was like, this has to, like, this is the plan. This is the game plan. I wasn't talking to Husky at the time because he was busy with other stuff, but later on we caught up, and he told me that the way that I treated it was exactly how he would have done it, and which is the right way in my opinion. And apparently it was, because the rest is history. Now Isaac is very easily the number one game of my channel and in my channel's history by far. And that's always been a dream come true of mine. So really the rarest combo video ever is when I knew that, okay, I can attract an audience big enough. Can I hold on to them? Can I continue to attract an audience and really guide how people view my Isaac content? And, you know, and I'm very pleased with the results, because turns out I somehow can.
No, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I have Isaac. I mean, I'm not a gigantic fan of roguelike games. I mean, I love Dead Cells, but that's kind of where I draw the line. But honestly, it was because of you and watching you play that was what really kind of just sucked me in, was to be like, this actually could be really interesting. I mean, I don't I won't ever do recordings or streams of it. I'll leave that to you, NL, and Sarah Marie Party, who does dailies on her channel, just because I will probably turn into what I call the bored Victa voice, and that is the, oh, we're gonna go down here and turn to left. We're gonna kill these enemies over here, without doing like the anecdotes that you are famous for.
That's sad. That's like sad that you do a better bored Victa voice than I do. That's, you should roll that. Never, but don't ever. That's one point I like to point out to people, is that you should never. You should really just do what sounds good to you, because eventually, again, if you talk about the creed and the consistency factor that drove me, like I was doing StarCraft videos, I was doing League of Legends. At one point, I was doing League, Dota 2, and HOTS videos simultaneously, because I said, you know, I want to prove that you can do all 3 games on one channel and not have a complete civil meltdown in the comments. Right. And it never once in my brain did it, or in my I guess that's where my brain is, but never once in my mind did it ever occur to me that, oh, I shouldn't do this because Husky's, I'm never going to be Husky, or I'm never going to be Day 9, or no, I shouldn't do this, I'm never going to be Freak, or no, I shouldn't do this, I'm never going to be, you know, Purian Flax or someone like that. So, you know, if you want to do Isaac, you know, do Isaac. That, because that's the whole reason why I started. I was like, yeah, I know who Northern Lion is, I know who Huts is, I know who BizSnap and Cobalt Street are, but I don't. Just because I know that they're huge and they're established, and I shouldn't. One person I need to mention before we go any further in Isaac is that I would have never known about Isaac if it weren't for Lethal Frag, who was a friend of mine and a huge influence in how I do stuff on Twitch.
Of course.
And I always attribute him to any success in Isaac at the start, because he's the one who introduced me to the game. So that being said, one day I just fired up Isaac. I was like, you know what? I see it on a Steam sale. I bought it for like $4, and I was like, I'm just gonna record my first impressions just to see it. And at the time, I didn't know anything about Isaac. The first boss I fought was Pin. I lost against Pin on floor 1, and I was like, I don't see what the big deal is. But then I found myself continually playing, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm just gonna start up a series. I'm going to call it Isaac Victa, because I'm an uncreative, you know, piece of uncreative garbage, and the rest is history. So when you say that, you know, you would like to try it, or if you try something, not even just with Isaac, but for your own stuff, Boogie Knight, you should just run with it, because you never know. You never know how people are going to react and how people are going to translate your articulation of a game. If the commentary is good, I mean, the gameplay doesn't have to be incredible, but the point of all this is that don't be afraid to do ideas, or don't be apprehensive to do ideas because other people are already established. Right. You know, is it going to be more difficult? Yeah. But the other half of my creed has been sheer force of will, which I think that is something that a lot of people have attributed towards me. Is I saw it in Twitch chat a couple of days ago, where somebody said Sinvicta he refuses to lose just out of sheer stubbornness and force of will, which I guess is my MO. But that holds true with anything that I do as far as videos are concerned. I'll keep doing Isaac videos. I don't care if Husky's telling me. Even Husky, my best friend, told me many times, he's like, you've got to stop doing Isaac. You have to stop doing Isaac. It's driving people away, and I ignored him. I said, I mean, I acknowledged him, but I ignored him. I said, I don't care, because I enjoy playing the game, even if people don't like it on YouTube. I don't care. At some point, you have to cast everyone's opinion aside and say, I'm just going to do this for me. I'm not enjoying playing Heroes of the Storm. I'm not enjoying playing League. I hate Hearthstone. I just want to play Isaac.
Solo queue silliness.
Yeah. And Isaac for a long time was the whipping boy for many, I almost want to say years on my channel. Isaac was consistently 200-300 views versus a couple thousand with Heroes of the Storm, or even before that with ARAM and League of Legends and Air Amazing, and my solo queue silliness that I used to do, which was called solo queue. Oh, what was it called? It was called solo queue something in my League of Legends channel, or a League of Legends series. But I always just continued to just want to do Isaac just because I wanted to just have a vacation game. So yeah, if you've ever wanted to do Isaac or start a project and you felt apprehensive because either someone else that you know of is much bigger and plays it, don't worry about that. Just do it. That's what I tell people. Just don't do it. I will never be able to be Northern Lion. You know, and I don't want to be Northern Lion. I don't want to be Total Biscuit. I don't want to be Husky Starcraft.
Of course.
And where I'll end this thought is that without getting too philosophical on you, you can't go into this business comparing yourself to somebody else, because you're going up against expectations that are not your own. You know, starting an Isaac series because you want to play the game, but I know people will just watch NL. So, you know, you'll never be Northern Lion. You know, go with what's within your realistic means of expectations and just go from there. Just start building them slowly but surely over time, and eventually you'll find your own, and people will now have their own expectations of you. And that's where you really get to build up, and you know, and that's basically just how I've operated.
Yeah. Oh my God, great talent. I agree with you that doing some dual cast bronze crossover with Husky, that would be insane.
Oh God. Yeah, if I could ever get that guy on a microphone, we've talked about it, but I mean, it's, you know, Husky and I have a great relationship. He's my best friend, so I wouldn't know anyone without Husky. And I'm convinced that if I didn't know Husky, I would not know. TB would be the only person I would know, but even then, I wouldn't have reconnected with TB without Husky. Mike has always been there, and by that extension, I would have never met Krendor. I would have never met Jesse, which extends to I would have never met Mathis, which extends to I would have never met the NLSS guys.
Right.
So it's very easy for me to try to take credit for a lot of things, but I've consistently said no, because I'm not taking credit, and I will always be thankful for Husky. And that's where I've always maintained that loyalty to him. And there's a lot of things about other people that no one will ever know. But Husky had a large part in many different channels that have now gone on to be very established on YouTube, which he directly started or helped with and never got credit for one reason or another. And I didn't want to be that person who started with knowing Mike, and he stuck his neck out for me when he really didn't have to, and then not pay him severance. And I will always do that. I've always maintained that sort of loyalty, you know, and whenever you have someone like that telling me, saying you need to stop playing Isaac, and I say no, that takes a lot of balls, because this is someone who knows a lot more about you, but I was just sheer stubborn. I'm a Taurus, so I'm pretty bullheaded, you know, and I just said, no, I don't care what you say. I'm going to play Isaac.
It doesn't matter what you say.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty much that. I didn't care. It doesn't matter what you think. I'm going to rock bottom this and play Isaac until the end of time.
Christ. Well, I mean, I think it's going back to what you're saying about, you know, don't compare yourself to other people. I mean, I think that's just kind of a knee-jerk reaction that if you're trying to come up as a content creator, whether on Twitch or Mixer or YouTube, your first reaction is to be like, you know, for example, for me, when I was doing movie reviews, when I started doing that, I was constantly comparing myself to the Cinema Snob, because he was kind of the first person that got me down that pike. And then when I started doing games, I was associating myself with CJU Games, because he does a lot of horror and puzzle stuff, and those are kind of my thing. And eventually I just said, you know what, screw it. You know, Boogie Knight's going to do his own thing.
Yeah, and that's the way to, in my opinion, that's the way to do it. You can't let someone else's success hold back your own. You have to, as long as you keep your expectations in line and what you are capable of, don't hold yourself to anyone else's expectations, because you'll never make it. You have to go, you know exactly what you want to do, and no one can ever answer that for you. And that's you. I mean, you did it correctly, in my opinion. Anyway, you should just do it. Just at some point, you have to cast all that apprehension aside and say, you know what, I'm just going to do it. It may work, it may not, but the only way that you can guarantee 100% of the time that it will not work is if you don't try it. That's that's one of the only truths in this business, is that you absolutely cut the snake's head off without even giving it a chance to breathe if you decapitate it before it even gets out of the cage, you know. So that is an
amazing metaphor.
Well, I mean, it's true. I mean, you gotta, if you want to let the snake try to have a chance to live, you gotta at least leave the head on, you know. And if it doesn't work out, then sure, execute it or turn it into a delicious soup that they make in Red Dead Redemption. I don't even know if they have snakes in that game. I think they might, but
I know they did bear stew, because Binging with Babish did a recipe for that.
Yep, they've got bear stew. Bear meat is one of the few meats I have not eaten yet. I'd like to try it, but I heard it's real gamey.
Yeah, I heard it's like an extremely game. It's even gamier than venison.
I don't mind like I've had venison to where it's not. It really doesn't bother me at all. But I have a particular sensitiveness to gamey meats. If depending on, I guess, like the how gamey it is. Like I can go to Fogo, which is my favorite restaurant ever, and they have lamb chops there. They have leg of lamb, and sometimes I'll try it and be like, yeah, you know, it's pretty good. It's got a little bit of a tang to it. You can tell you're not eating beef, but other times it's like I'm eating the hoof of an animal that was standing in a barn. Sort of, you know, you can taste the hay almost. So
you can taste the crap it's standing in.
Yeah, it does taste, some gaminess does taste like you just dove into a barn, you know, mouth open just to see what you're gonna find.
So yeah, you have to takes the phrase mouth diving to a whole new low.
Oh yeah, and you're sitting there just chewing on it and be like, yeah, this ain't your mama's chicken, you know.
Jesus. Wow. Okay, so here's a question that I'm pretty sure is burning on a lot of people's minds: is how did you come up with the name Sinvicta?
Sinvicta was actually a combination of two words. I had a band in high school where our band was called S Invicta. It was S period, and then Invicta was the second word. And it's actually the scientific name for the fire ant. And which automatically people are like, oh, we should call you the fire ant. It's like, no, I don't like fire ants. I like ants. I think hive mind organisms are extremely interesting to watch and to study. But we were just looking for a band name one day, and I guess fates aligned where I happened to be reading a Reader's Digest one day, and I saw a thing about fire ants, and it was Selenopus invicta. You know, I was like, you know what? That sounds like a pretty cool name, but it's too long. And then in that Reader's Digest article, they started abbreviating it with S Invicta. I was like, you know what? I was like, that's pretty cool. Like S could stand for anything, that we can let people run rampant. And the other guys, either they were too scared or they just didn't care. It was probably the latter, because I wasn't scary at all in high school.
They're like scaring people.
Yeah, I grew into scaring people, but that was only after I started playing football for forever. But they're like, yeah, that's whatever. We started going by S Invicta, and then in 1998, when StarCraft came out, or Brood War came out, that's when I discovered that I was like, oh my god, people were playing games on computers.
God, Brood War, that takes me back.
Like, how is this possible? You know, and in the old school Battle.net, they used to allow you to put periods in your name. So you could put like a clan, like everyone had, of course, everyone who played StarCraft and Warcraft or Diablo back then had a clan like a clan tag that they would do. Yeah. So you would, like, our clan tag was Mayhem, for the Disciples of Mayhem.
Nice.
Which is a clan that I started back in 1998. And so mine was Mayhem, and then like tilde S period Invicta. And people would just call me Sin. And eventually Blizzard did this patch to where they would not allow punctuation at all, because I guess people started putting like websites and stuff in their name, and they were trying to protect kids, of course, which is the correct thing to do.
Oh, of course.
So I was forced to change my name because I had a period in mind. So I just said, well, I can't think of another name, and I'm already used to being called Sin anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I'm just going to combine S Invicta to Sinvicta,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the name I've been going with ever since. And no one else was going by Sinvicta until much later, a couple years ago. Then when my WoW videos came out, that's when you start seeing all these Invictus pop up, and I was like, well, at least I know I was the first.
It turns into some Highlander action. There can be only one.
Yeah, pretty much. But luckily, what is kind of nice though is now that I don't want to overstep my bounds and say that I'm so ubiquitous that everyone in the world knows me. I would never feel that way. But what is funny in the circles of friends that I've gone around over the years, when anyone ever says the word sin, when they're talking about using it in a proper noun, 99% of the time people associate the word sin with me. So whenever someone says sin, they're usually talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think out of all this, if I died tomorrow, that's the best thing ever, is that if you just talk about the proper noun or proper name sin, that I will probably somehow be associated with that. And I'm fine with that.
Well, there's actually a great irony behind that. Before I do that though, no, Rocket, I'm not trying to make you into a vegetarian. Haul down south, I'm making beef stroganoff later on. Look, we want to start doing. If I wanted to make you turn into a vegetarian, Rocket, I would just make you watch Maddie Matheson videos on YouTube. God forbid. But I think it's kind of ironic though, how there's the name Sin, yet your official title on YouTube is Sinvicta 316, which always harkens back to the biblical scripture. So I think that's kind of like an interesting yin yang.
Right. The thing with the 316 though that came out is the 316 doesn't stem from a biblical reference at all. It does in a tangential sense, because where it originates from is indeed a reference to the Bible verse John 3:16.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually put it in my name because I was just a big Stone Cold Steve Austin fan.
Of course.
Back in the Raw days, and in the like Civil War Vince McMahon days where WWE was still the WWF, it was all Steve Austin, which of course everyone remembers from back in the glory days, and that's where the 316 comes from. But of course everyone associates that with me just being a religious person, which I'm not at all.
But I remember you were talking about that during one of your Isaac runs, being like, no, I'm not religious. I don't understand why. And here's see, I always attribute it because I remember when you were talking about a lot of your videos, not just Isaac, but Darkest Dungeon, stuff like that. You talked about all the times that you played football, and I always see at the football games, people are the fans are always some idiot is always holding up a sign saying John 3:16, like from the stands. I'm like, what does this have to do with? Well, I guess in your case, the Buccaneers. Oh
God, yeah. I've got to do the football podcast immediately after this, so I talked enough about the Buccaneers. The John. If you don't know what the Bible verse is,
Catholic.
I was raised Catholic too, so I'll read the verse for everybody just because I need to look it up because I don't want to.
Isn't it
like
want
to mistype it? So.
Since God loved the world, He gave His one and only Son.
Yeah, His only begotten Son. Yeah, the whole verse is for God so loved the world as to give His only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in Him may not perish but may have life everlasting. So God so loved the world, and lots of yada 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 stuff. But that's basically the idea of being everlasting life, because of you remain, as long as you remain in someone's memory, your life is eternal in some way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's a good marketing ploy. It's definitely, as long as you're alive in someone's mind, are you really technically dead, sort of philosophical way.
The tree falls in the woods concept.
Yeah. As long as one person hears it, I mean, that tree always existed, right? So
exactly.
I think that's the reason why that sort of like caught on with sports and whatever. So then people started associating with other stuff, and then eventually Steve Austin got it, and then I got it, even though I don't focus on the 316 part of my name ever. It just happens to be there. If I could change my channel name, because there actually is a youtube.com/Sinvicta, which is owned by me, but I don't know how to log into that account, and YouTube won't give me the information about it. So yeah, I had to stick with 316, unfortunately. But if I could start it all over again, I would not have included the 316. But when I made this channel, it was to post a couple of videos for my parents because I wanted to show them that it was snowing in the town that I was living in. So I was like, Sinvicta 316, whatever. I never, of course, ever dreamed that it would become my job. Because if I had that kind of foresight, I wouldn't have put 316 on there. I would have named myself something else. So, you know.
Hashtag thanks, YouTube. I'm with you on that one, Doss. For those of y'all that are just joining me tonight, I'm actually here on the Who's Your Creator and What Do They Do podcast with Sinvicta, which I put, not links per se, but where you can find him on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Incredible YouTuber and streamer. Really nice guy, an incredible musician. And thank you to everybody from the Mosh Pit who decided to come and watch this. And welcome to the Funk House, since Boogie, Funk, why not?
I like it.
Even though I'm a metalhead.
No, I like it.
I appreciate
I like it. Welcome to the Funk House.
Exactly. So now here's a little silly question for you. What do you think was the biggest train wreck game you ever played for your channel?
Ooh, biggest train wreck game.
I mean, to me, I get so mind flooded watching you play Lobotomy Corporation. I'm like, how is this dude micromanaging all these things happening at once? I'm like, I feel like I need to have be double fisting beers watching you play it.
Man, I don't know. There's if we're talking about not just in like a Sinvicta luck way, but just like in general, like what was the biggest like flop on the channel?
Well, yeah, I mean, or just the biggest flop that you considered that you're just like, take it out back behind the woodshed and set out a fire.
In recent memory, probably Oxygen Not Included. Because yes. I was really just firing off the cuff there. It was way different than I ever imagined. I had zero expectations with that game. My most disappointing flop was Battle Brothers because I've continually tried to bring that game back, but it won't. My audience doesn't want to see it, so I unfortunately just. Oh no, I'm not going to continue it. I would love to. It's a great game. But outside of those in recent memory, the only big train wreck that I can think of,
besides Gang Beasts or Bad Rats.
Well, yeah, I mean, I never played Bad Rats, but Gang Beasts.
Jesus.
Gang Beasts was great. I think that the biggest one that I can remember, which probably wasn't even worth doing, was there was a game called Infinity Wars that I played. It was a TCG that you can't play it anymore. It's now defunct. But I actually was like really solid hardcore. I was like, man, I love this game. I want it to take off, and it just never did. I would say my Scroll series back then, but that series actually had a decent, at the time anyway, had a decent amount of views. But the Infinity War stuff, I think, was truly one of the only times I was like, all right, I'm just going to pull this off my channel because it's just bad.
I was having expected to say Heroes of the Storm at one point, just because, like, for a guy that's normally so calm and collected, that's like the one time that I ever could like almost visualize your blood pressure rising.
I mean, I wouldn't really say Heroes, because Heroes, as bad as it could be, as far as train wrecks are concerned, I mean, yeah, there were train wreck moments in like games and stuff, but it was never a train wreck for the channel. You know, if we're talking about train wrecks as far as like the most stressful or annoying games to play, then Heroes is probably number one, if not Hearthstone, but it's probably Heroes. And that. I can't be mad at Heroes because it did great things for my channel as well. And I can't, I don't hold a grudge against Heroes, because you have to separate the game from like player experiences, you know. I mean, you can love Overwatch and think it's the greatest game in the world, but you can also hate the game because of the people that you're interacting with, which ultimately I think that is the reason why I don't do multiplayer games. And maybe even as an extension, I don't do a whole lot of collabs anymore. It's just because I've always been able to sort of work better on my own.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of the appeal for many of the series comes from the fact that it's just me by myself, but I managed to ramble on and on that people find interesting, that it keeps people around.
You turn into a
I don't
Led
know what it
Zeppelin
is.
song.
Yeah, yeah, I guess. I mean, if you can sync it up with Wizard of Oz, hey, go for it. You can make an episode out of that.
The fact that you just mentioned Wizard of Oz, I was talking to Rocket88 earlier, and actually brought up the whole Dark Side of the Rainbow thing,
Yep,
like the
yep.
Wizard of Oz, Pink Floyd thing. So, okay, Gordon Lightfoot, you read my mind.
Yeah, I never went so far as to actually see if that corroborated with the whole sync up myth or whatever. People say it does, people say that it doesn't, but
I
I don't
just
know. I never.
I don't have the patience to try and do the sync up.
Well, it's it's one of those things where I recognize that everyone loves the Wizard of Oz, but I never loved the video or the movie to be like, man, I really could go for watching Wizard of Oz right now. And the same thing goes for Pink Floyd too. It's like they have one song that is okay, I guess, but it's overplayed and many people have copied it. Korn's version of Another Brick in the Wall is great, by the way.
Oh, that's an amazing cover. But yeah,
Um,
Brick in the Wall just it made me want to peel the skin off my arms just because it basically was just slaughtered. I mean, it was for all intents and purposes, it was at critical mass.
yeah, yeah, and then you'll find a lot of overexposure when it comes to classic songs, and I don't know. I don't care for Pink Floyd. so when you tell me that it's hey, by the way, this song syncs up to another song from Dark Side of the Moon and Wizard of Oz, I'm like, okay, that's great. I'll take your word for it.
Freebird, play Freebird.
Freebird. Don't even get me started on Freebird.
So I can't. So we're not gonna. You're never gonna do a Word of Lauder cover of it.
I can unequivocally, confidently say that we will never cover Freebird ever. I will fire Mark from the band before that ever happens.
I could just see like a bunch of you guys just getting completely three sheets to the wind and just being like, "Yeah, let's do Freebird."
Nope, I would immediately throw a drumstick at Mark, and Nick wouldn't even. I don't think Nick would sing it. We would just say, nope, it's over. Stick a fork in it. The band's done. We're done.
We're just gonna just drop our equipment and walk away.
Yep.
And we'll talk about Word of Lauder in a couple minutes, but I do have a few more questions I do want to ask that focus on you as a content creator. Now, obviously, and this can be attributed to the adpocalypse, to YouTube throwing up more barriers left and right. But a lot of people are now streaming. So, I mean, as kind of a two-parter, what do you like most about streaming? And conversely, what do you like the least about it?
The bog standard response you're going to get from anyone you interview when you present them with this game is that they love the live interaction with people, because you're essentially, as a streamer, you're creating content but doing it live,
right?
Versus creating content that you're waiting to see the reaction to later on YouTube, and you get to read the comments. So that's going to be just the standard answer, is that the live experience. But outside of that, of the bog standard response, the thing I love most about streaming is that I can do it. I can work whenever I want to. And I know that if I'm at the point now where I can turn the stream on at any time, and I know that I'm going to have tens, if not hundreds of people tune in, and they may not be active supporters. They might just be passersby, but you get to take up a little bit of someone's time and make it either more enjoyable, or at least just in passing to say, hey, I know this person exists now. Like, you have someone who acknowledges that you do this for work.
Yeah.
And that really, it sort of reaffirms my decision to do this full time. So in streaming, I get to see that as soon as I turn the stream on and see the number go from 0 to whatever it goes up to, even if it's just 1, that tells me that, like, okay, well, yeah, it could be a Russian bot. I mean, who freaking knows? But hey, at least I know that there's someone else out there that's alive.
Hello, my friend. I am Nigerian royalty.
Yeah, exactly. Give me your 20 billion, currency, whatever, name your currency. But yeah, it really is for the live experience. And I've always dreamt of being on stage, being a heavy metal rock star, which of course that's not what I do right now. but this sort of gives me an opportunity to perform, I guess. And I never really considered myself as a performer because I'm not good at role playing. I suck at role playing. I'm a horrible actor.
I disagree. I agree with what Wayne June. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That you mentioned you're talking to, quote unquote Uncle Wayne earlier on your Isaac, which I've now started calling him Uncle Wayne and Uncle Deckard and all them.
It's almost scary to the point that some of my vernacular now rubbed on other people. That I see so many people call Krendor Coach now. It's funny to me.
Well, I mean,
same thing goes for Uncle Wayne and Uncle Deckard too.
I know the one big Sinvicta quote that I take away that is if I get really frustrated or if something really bugs me, I'm just like, hooray.
Yeah, just an uninterested, like completely like worn down, like hooray.
Well, I mean, go ahead, sorry.
No, I think the one that I've heard the most other than that is whenever you Chris Barassa, who is the co-founder of Red Hook Studios, who made Darkest Dungeon, of course. He's also did all the art for most of the art for Darkest Dungeon. He summarized it best when he said that he appreciates how I take any game, specifically speaking about Darkest Dungeon, but this also expands to the broader view. Is he said that what's interesting about you talking to me is that
there's nothing interesting about me. Trust me.
No, don't sell yourself short. But what he would say is he said what's interesting about you is that you can go into any game that you play and it's automatically you versus the game. So if Isaac does something bad, it's like, okay, game.
I love that. I love when you do that. Or the Timmy questions, the rhetorical Timmy questions, which I've done once or twice, and my friend Silverly absolutely despises it when I do that.
Yeah, it's that part. That's the one that I've heard a lot, which was just that, okay, game. Like people say that they pick up that from me, which I I'm flattered by that something like that would happen, but I do tend to do that, and it's easier for me to express frustration, but also to find that competitive sheer force of will. Like, I'm going to beat this because this guy is not going to beat me. This guy being the game. So that's the one that if I could choose that I'd be associated with more. But a lot of people also do associate me with either the board Sinvicta or the hooray type stuff,
Yeah, and Dawes, I mean, I naturally have a self-deprecating sense of humor. I've got a very dry sense of humor, so I will occasionally throw in sarcastic comments at my own expense. I joke that once again I was raised Catholic, and Catholics like to blame themselves. It comes with the territory. But yeah, well, I mean, I should insert that the OK game just because I'm streaming Dark Souls 2. And the game that like makes everybody's blood pressures and quite often their BACs skyrocket.
Yep.
I mean,
as opposed to their BMI, which just is probably also really skyrocketed. Exactly. I know mine is.
Exactly. So, okay, game, but no. Now here's a big one for you. I'm crossing off some of the questions that you've already answered. Now, as a large content creator, whom a lot of people look up to, including myself, I mean, what do you think is the biggest hurdle for up-and-coming content creators? And this is something that circulates in both the small creators like myself, to the medium creators like CJU and Lady Lilia, to the big creators, and you can roll your eyes at this all you want. I mean, because I consider you a big-time content creator. I mean, so what do you think the biggest hurdle is nowadays?
I'm glad one of us considers me as a big-time content creator.
You're like the Peter Gabriel song, Big Time.
Definitely not, in my opinion. The biggest hurdle, honestly, is there's two answers to this. The first one's going to be the proper one, which is just saying, oh, it's yourself. You're your biggest hurdle. You can do anything you aspire to. Blah blah blah. But outside of that overly typical response, the realistic answer is finding what you enjoy and then having the ability to make it enjoyable for other people. So you're going to hear a lot of people say that, like, there's too much congestion in the content creation world, which I mean, now any day you can take a dart and just throw it at any dartboard and land on someone who's probably going to be a they call themselves a content creator these days. I mean,
Yeah.
people stream, it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to do so. So congestion is definitely a big part of the oversaturation of content creation, especially these days.
Oh yes.
But really the biggest hurdle is just finding a foothold and something that you really truly enjoy. You have to the key way that I've always thought, this is how I've always conducted myself, is that you need to record or do commentary or sing or do whatever as if you were going, as if you're even if you're playing for 0 people, act like and conduct yourself like there's a million people watching you at all times. You know, you're not under any illusion. But if you can maintain that ideology of I'm on a stage with 0 but performing for 1 million, that's a good way to really understand how you get to turn something for you. You're not just talking to yourself. If you imagine yourself talking to yourself, you're not going to come up with anything interesting to say because it's just you.
Right.
Conducting yourself as if you are making a video for 1 million people, you just never know these days. And I think that if more people went with that idea, it's not about professionalism. I disagree with anyone trying to associate that with professionalism. It's not about that. It's about being in a working state of mind, or at least in a less, I guess, direct way, being in a performance state of mind is the best way to start and conduct yourself moving forward. So that new project. So like if you've never heard of The Binding of Isaac, but I just really like this game, and I just going to start creating videos for it, no one's going to stick around and watch you if you're just if there's like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds of dead air with you not saying anything. But if you're
politics.
If you're, yeah, I mean, or just, you know, whatever. If you,
sorry, I had to make that in there somewhere.
If you are, but if you're in the mentality of I'm making this video for 1 million people right now, that unlocks something. If you have a creative brain, which I don't feel like I do, and I'm not fishing for compliments here. I've never considered myself as a creative person, but moving forward with the idea that, okay, I got to do this as if there's 1 million people listening to me right now. If you approach stuff like that, I think that you're ahead of the game by far and away, because you really are just you create doors that people are going to open for you, rather than being completely uninteresting, knowing that, oh, it's just me, I've got 0 viewers. You're not creating any doors at all for that.
Right.
You know, so I realize it's a very roundabout way of answering the question, but
no, it makes perfect sense.
It really comes down to just keeping an open mind and being in a performance state of mind will do surprisingly large amounts of wonders for you. To the point where eventually you are going to attract the right person who says, hey, let's do a collab or something like that. Now, what I will say is that one of the biggest strengths that you have to be associated with is certainly lucky. You do have to be lucky, because especially these days, it's almost impossible to get started here if you don't know someone who's already established. And that was the old adage back when I started, because without Husky, I have no doubt that I wouldn't be here. I would not have been able to make this to a job without him, and he was already established. You know, what I've told other people is that if your son, if your daughter, or if you came to me and asked me, is it possible to do what you do starting from nothing, I would say it's possible. Yes, it's extremely difficult, especially these days.
Yeah.
So having someone who's already established and just being lucky is certainly going to be a very big key in your success. But by that same token, going back to the caveat that I was previously mentioning, is that you're not going to be able to meet the right person to get you into the door if you're not creating doors for yourself, create opportunities. And you're not going to do that if you're just talking to yourself. You have to talk like you are talking to someone who's important. And that's how I've always sort of done it. That's why I'm able to ramble on about just random BS, even though Isaac videos getting 50 views every single day or something like that, it didn't bother me. I picture that as being 50 million people, because you have to visualize that. Otherwise, you're going to be like, yeah, this sucks. I'm just not going to do it anymore.
No, I mean, that's a great approach to have. I mean, like, when I do movie reviews, for example, like, if I know that I know people tend to like it when I do a more snarky review. So if I have reviewed Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas and I get like 2 likes on that, and I can't be like, wow, you actually watched that piece of garbage? I'm like, yeah, it's an hour and a half of my life I'm never going to get back. But you know what? It was worth it.
Yeah. I mean, just, and like when you said that we broke 58,000 subs on YouTube, I didn't know, because that part is not I don't get it twisted. The numbers are certainly important.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to pay attention to that, but also at some point you can't focus on that. And I think that's what the biggest thing that a lot of the of smaller content creators really focus on, is that they worry about, well, this got 20 views, and my other video got like 100 views. When you're talking about especially that number, you're not talking about a huge difference in what should drive you to change what you do about your channel. Mm-hmm. There is a key point to make here, is that you certainly do want to make things that people want to see. Mm-hmm. And by a certain metric, the numbers do reflect that, but not always. And one big mistake that I see a lot of people do is that they focus too much on saying like that this is the Bible of what my channel needs to do. This thing got 100 views, this thing got 15 views. Obviously, I'm going to do the one that has 100 views. Well, you don't know where those 100 views came from.
Right.
It could have been random. I mean, surely you could look at the analytics, but overall, just don't worry about that. You can't worry about what you think other people want. You just have to go do what you want.
Right.
And that's the best way, and that's how I've approached it. I don't know if it's necessarily the best way, but you'll find yourself being happy. You'll find yourself being able to be in a performance state of mind, because you don't have to fake your enjoyment for stuff. No, there were many games that I stopped playing because I straight up, even though they were getting thousands of views, I straight up just did not enjoy the game. I can't. People were calling me crazy because I stopped Heroes of the Storm back when it was still getting 7,000-8,000 views per video, which is not a whole lot. But for my channel, it's pretty good, especially back in those days. But I've always maintained honesty with people, and I said that I'm not having fun with this game, and I don't want to play it anymore. I did the same thing with Hearthstone, did the same thing with League, with Dota, and I think that there comes a time where you cannot worry or focus too much about what other people want from you. You have to do what you know is best and what will make you happy on your channel, in order to be in that mindset of saying, I'm performing for 1 million people. I don't care how many people were actually watching it. In my mind, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to have a good sound setup. I'm going to, if I decide not to swear, I'm going to make sure that I don't swear. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make sure I don't bring up politics or religion or whatever. You conduct yourself how you want. That's to each his own there.
Of course.
But being in the idea that this didn't get a whole lot of views, so I'm not going to do that anymore. I obviously need to try something else, is not necessarily as black and white as you make it seem to be. I'm not saying you, I'm saying in general, in a rhetorical sense.
No,
Well,
I mean, plus the market on the quote unquote the platforms is so mercurial. It's always subject to change. I mean, it can go from how horror games make such a big peak, something like it's busting with the Resident Evils and the Silent Hills and whatnot. All of a sudden, we're knee deep in battle royale games. So unless you're playing what you want to do, like in your case, how you do some gacha games, you do Isaac, you sample other stuff like RimWorld and whatnot, and you're playing what you like, whether you're playing to a niche market, it's still going to be good because it's something that they're going to get the genuine article, so to speak, as opposed to you're just putting on airs.
Yeah, I mean, I realize that playing mobile gacha games is not what a majority of the people that watch me enjoy. Me specifically, I'm extremely lucky, and I would even go so far to use a word that I never ever use, which is blessed. I'm very blessed to have the following that I do that remains extremely loyal to whatever I put out. There are there are much bigger content creators than I that would kill to have that kind of loyalty, and I never take that for granted. But that being said, you know, there's going to be games that people want to watch me for, and ones they don't. Some people really hate RimWorld. Some people really hate Isaac.
I know some
really
people that absolutely despise RimWorld.
Yeah, it's all about you're never going to please everybody, and even though you hear everyone say that, I don't think everyone really truly understands or believes that. They're saying it just to go along with the crowd, like, well, you can't please everyone, but then they try to please everyone. You're not going to be able to. You'll never be able to do that. And I think that too many people mix that up in their minds, especially in content creation, where it's like they in turn associate that with numbers. And I've never been someone who focuses on that. Again, numbers, yes, they're important. I'm not going to dispute the importance of knowing what people truly want to see based on numbers alone, but that can't be the only metric that you drive your channel and your content by. Ultimately you have to go with your gut, and you have to go with what you just want to do. And if you do that, I think that ultimately you're much happier. You don't experience the burnout that you hear a lot of content creators go out through, and you can put out 2 to 3 videos a day for 5 years.
Yeah, no, I mean, and here's the other thing too. Is my best friend in the world, Harkov 311, he is big on strategy games. So he's like playing Factorio, he's playing Victoria 2, and I know people whose eyes will glaze over trying to watch him do that stuff, but he's so passionate about it. You're going there to see him talk about strats and pull his hair out, what's left of it at least, when something frustrating happens.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's all about now. One other thing before we transition out of this is that obviously there's going to be games that have bigger audiences. That's going to happen. You're going to have more people who want to watch Red Dead Redemption 2 versus some gacha game. Right. You know, or Minecraft, for example. Well, maybe Minecraft's not a good example there, but
play Doki Doki,
or like you know, or play Resident Evil, like the remake, or you know, something like that. Something that you can be truly passionate about. Let's say, for example, Madden 2002. It's just your favorite game in the entire world. That you just love the game, right? Of course, if you try to take that and say, this is my established game, I'm gonna go headstrong with this, it's not gonna work out. Like you also have to keep expectations within reality. Like there's just some games that you're gonna play that just aren't gonna work out because they're just not big games, you know. But going after everyone's like, well, you know, I'm playing Fortnite now. Why has no one watched me play Fortnite? Because there's too many Fortnite channels. There's too many battle royale channels out there, you know. So it's finding a right balance of saying that you're doing something that you want, but also there's a little bit of a convergence in, does this game line up with something that overall people enjoy watching? You know, it's the equivalent of hitting the lottery and finding a game that's very obscure. I somewhat feel lucky that Lobotomy Corporation turned out the way it did, because I wasn't planning on doing a series in that game. It just seemed interesting, and I just so happened to have an audience for that latched on and then shared it, and then it sort of that Lobotomy Corporation was very lucky for me. But in a broader sense, finding a niche game that you're banking all of your expectations on for success is very difficult and also kind of dangerous to do, because you might end up wasting a lot of your time.
And if the market shifts, I mean, Rocket and I had a conversation about that a while ago. If the market shifts, there's a chance you could be completely, you know, POS or SOL. I mean, so yeah, it could. But I agree with you, Kawhi. I could only imagine Sinvicta playing Doki Doki. That would just be.
Oh God! I'll let Matt Pat play those games, or at least do theories on those. That's fine with me. Those are the type of games that I enjoy watching people play, not doing myself. Not because I'm scared or anything. I don't think I've ever played a game that's truly made me scared, because I don't know. I don't get scared easily. But it's just interesting for me to see someone who knows much more about the game, or someone who's way more entertaining than I do. Like I watch Markiplier play all kinds of games, you know, and he does a brilliant way of weaving creativity into the videos that he does. So you know, that's I won't be playing Doki Doki anytime soon. Maybe for a sub goal one day, but I already know. I mean, I already know what happens in the game, so it's not going to be genuine, you know.
Oh no, exactly. I mean, the same case with me and Slender.
Yeah.
But
well, the thing with Slender though is that Slender, the way that the horror is in that game is that it's not exactly it's linear as far as the story goes, but there's a lot of scares, and because he like you never go the same path in that game, so you could get scared at a completely different point in the run versus another one on the next day. Whereas something like Doki Doki, you know, where kind of like all the jump scares they're always set in an exact spot, and you know how to trigger them, sort of thing, you know. So that I think that's one thing about Five Nights at Freddy's, which is why that whole series is sort of eternal, is just because of the fact that most of the jump scares, if not all of them, are completely random, just because there's so many things that can trigger them. So it keeps it fresh and it keeps it entertaining, which is the reason why people come back for more. And to stay on that tangent, same thing goes for Isaac. You'll never have the same run of Isaac ever. Even if someone's playing the same seed as you, they're not going to it's not going to be the same run. They're not going to make the exact same movements that you did. They're not going to make the exact same shot at the exact same time at the exact same angle that you did. It's just impossible. Yeah. There's way too many variables.
Thanks a lot for stopping by, Doss. I really do appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful night or day or whichever time zone you're in. I really do appreciate it. Have a good one. Yeah, I mean, that could mean, because I would absolutely love, because once again, me being a huge fan of horror games, is that I would love to be able to see somebody else play Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and just see what they did, just as for comparison points. That's all.
Right.
But
right.
But we could talk about this all night. I'm sure about that. So let's go ahead and shift over to music now for a little bit. Now, how long have you played the drums, and what exactly made you want to play them to begin with?
I decided it came down to whether or not I thought I would be better at drums than guitar. Really, it was it. And I found myself. I made the decision that I wanted to play the drums when I listened to "Until It Sleeps" by Metallica. Oh, God. I never wanted to be a musician until I heard Metallica. And I never heard of Metallica until Load came out. That was the first album that I've ever heard. And Until It Sleeps, I had that on repeat for days almost.
That song gives me the chills to this day. And actually, one of the first concerts I ever saw was Metallica's live shit back in the 90s.
Yeah, see, I didn't even listen to them back then. It wasn't until they did the Load tour with Corrosion Conformity, which is when I started following them. But I found myself, I was picturing in my head, I was like, what am I doing more? Am I air guitaring more, or am I air drumming more? And I found myself consistently unconsciously drumming, and I was like, well, I guess drums make sense to me then, because I feel like I'm more accurate with that. So I've been playing drums for before I stopped really practicing. I'd been playing for about 8 years. And I wasn't practicing every day or anything like that, but we did have full band practices at least once a week, sometimes twice on the weekends. And we doing shows and stuff. But I never took any lessons. I don't particularly think I'm a good drummer. I don't know. I've never really thought of myself as a good musician. But one thing I will take credit for, as far as one thing that I am strongly prideful for, and even possibly a little arrogant about, is that I know what makes good music. And I mean, I don't have any number one singles or anything like that, but to me, I know I'm very good at deconstructing a song and replicating that formula for original music. And that's why Mark and I go so well together. Mark being a guitarist, really, to me, this might be a revelation to a lot of people. There's only two people in the band. It's me and Mark.
Right.
Nick is our vocalist. He of course we include him in the band, but what's a band really? In my definition of a band is a group of people who go out and they play live shows. They practice together. We don't do that. We don't practice together. Mark, 99%, 95% of it is Mark and I meeting with each other. We're writing riffs, we're writing drum beats and that sort of thing. And the riffs always come first. Me sitting down with Mark, and we're trying to figure out melodies. I show him a song. I'm like, hey, I really like what As I Lay Dying did in this song, or I really like what Metallica did in this song. Let's try to deconstruct that and then create a riff that's based on this, or we call it templates. And then Mark and I will simply just record. We record a bunch of stuff. He puts down ideas. He emails them to me. I tell him what I like. I tell him what I don't like. I tell him what we need to change when we meet again. We'll meet up at his house and we'll work on stuff. And once we have a solid foundation down, that's when we're like, okay, I need to write a drum beat for this now. So I'll work with the riffs and write the drums. And then if I have to play them, we can play them. We've been working with digital drums a lot lately because they're just easier to do. I can crank out drum beats much faster digitally than on an acoustic set, because I have to physically go out to the studio, which now that we're with Chris, our producer, and he owns his own studio down here in Houston, I can't just walk in and say, hey, I need to lay this down real quick, because it's a professional studio. I mean, he's got clients all over the place.
Right.
So it's much easier for us for me, and specifically for drums, to write the digital drum beats, send them to Mark. We try to have like a basic setup of what I want this to sound like. Ultimately, it comes down to what Sinvicta or what Brad wants to hear. And once I have a sound where I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with this, let's roll with that. Then we get Chris involved, then we get Nick involved. The lyrics and stuff come afterwards, but the core of the only band, if we are a band, is me and Mark.
So you guys are basically the Tobias Forges of the band.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, I'm not trying to make references to Ghost, but I mean, since Tobias, aka Cardinal, what's his face, the new Papa Emeritus, basically said he's like, it's always been a project with just me. So I guess conversely, it's always been between you and Mark. Yeah,
Mark and I that's the band. I mean, you know, if Mark and I were to split, the band would be split. I mean, that's it. But we go great together because his musical talent far exceeds mine. And I have my strength is within the creativity and knowing what sounds good with other things. So like I know that if I tell him I'll say the riff is this riff would sound really good if you played it like this. Or for Silly is Fractured, for example, I said I want to have an acoustic part for this, because this, and actually Silly is Fractured is I'll be able to address it and answer a lot of questions by telling you the concept for Silly is Fractured here.
See, I always thought it was like based on the NES game Journey to Silius, because it almost has an 8-bit sound to it during, like, you know, the quote unquote the chorus, I guess you could say.
Well, it's the whole down to its bare bones. The whole song is a cover song. That's all it is. It's just it's a cover of the first stage of Journey to Silius.
Called it.
And that's been my favorite 8-bit sound. That's been my favorite 8-bit song above any other game in history. It's above Mega Man 3. It's above Castlevania. It's above Castlevania 2. It's above Link. The first stage in Journey to Silius has always persisted with me as my favorite. I think this is the absolute best NES song of the 8-bit era of all time for me. Of course, you're going to get 100. You put 100 different people in the same room, ask them, hey, what's your favorite Nintendo theme? You're going to get 100 different answers probably.
Oh, exactly. Hey, Lex, good to see you. Welcome to the stream. Glad you can stop by.
But to go back to describing, you know, where I think my strengths are is definitely if I explain the concept of Journey to Silius or Silius Fractured. So what I wanted to do, I told Mark, because I rediscovered that song thanks to AGDQ, because I had forgotten about that song forever, and they played it during a break, and I was like, holy crap, that's freaking Journey to Silius. Like, I forgot about that song. I forgot about it in my memory. Even though it's my favorite of all time, I haven't heard it forever, so I forgot about it. And I heard it, and I immediately texted Mark. I was like, I know what our next song it has to be.
Hell yes.
And I said I want to cover this song, which he was okay with it because his previous band covered Bloody Tears from Simon's Quest.
Right.
So which everyone knows, the dun 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 dun. You know, everyone knows Bloody Tears. So he was okay with the idea. He just wasn't sure how we were going he wasn't sure what I was planning on doing with it. So I told him, I said, when we met for the first time working on Silliest Fractured, I said, okay, this is what I want. I want to do an exact 1-to-1 cover down to the exact BPM. I want it to be indistinguishable as far as the change ups goes, the melodies, the notes, the harmonies. I want it to be 1-to-1. Then I want to, the second part of the song, I want to create as if somebody came to me and said, hey, Sinvicta, we love your band. Will you do your own version of this song? And they presented this song to us. Okay. So I called that part A and part B. And Mark was like, that sounds great, but I don't know. It's just a 40-second loop. I don't know how are we going to turn this to a song type deal, which was that was the main problem that I had to try to solve. So we had the A part, which is supposed to be, this is a direct cover. If you go to YouTube, you type in Journey to Silliest Stage 1 cover, this is what people would probably expect to hear.
Right.
The B part would be in from the conceptual stage would be if somebody approached me to pay me, they paid me money. They gave me $500, said, we want your band to do your own version of this song. It can't be, it doesn't have to be exact. How would you guys write the song if we gave you the melody? That's the concept for part B. And then I got the idea to take part C, which was to take elements from the part A, which are the 1-to-1 cover, part B, which is our version, combine them into into the final act of the song, which would be a beautiful harmony and combination of part A. You understand, you know what song is being played there, but also it's drastically different from part A in the sense that there's a lot of ad-libbing that goes on with the drums, with the guitars, but it's also different than part B, because it's not just we're not just basing this off of our version either. We're melding it together almost. It's almost it's kind of just a merging.
No,
and
it's brilliant.
And that's the concept that I wanted, that I went into the idea with Silliest Fractured with Mark. And what's so great about us is that I can do that. I can take all these random crazy ideas with songs, but Mark is good enough musically and he's talented enough to be able to translate my ideas into music, into actual like listenable music. And then that's why we've always gone good together. And if you know, tens of thousands of people enjoy it, then I guess we're on to something, you know?
Exactly. Thanks for stopping by, Great Talent. I really do appreciate it. Have a great night. But I get to go back to what you were talking about, the equipment. I almost have this mental image of you with your regular drum kit and then your digital, and then pulling it out and be like, you know those drum kits that are like double drum kits, you know? So
yeah, I have my studio set is different. For the first 6 songs I used my own personal set, which is a Tama 11 piece. If you 12 if you include I've got a what's the name of the rack? It's the same rack that Lars uses.
oh yeah.
I can't believe I'm spacing on it. It's the name of an island, begins with a D. Why can't I think of that? That's gonna really bother me now. But I have a Tama set. I love Tamas. Tamas are great. God, what is the name of that drummer of the Gibraltar? Not Gibraltar.
No, Gibraltar. I'm having a brain fart too.
It begins with a D. Or no, actually, it is Gibraltar.
Is it?
Yeah, it's Gibraltar.
Okay. What the hell
Yeah, the Rock of Gibraltar. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, I have a Gibraltar rack.
Oh, nice.
If you include that as a 12 piece. But I've always used double bass pedals. I've never gone with a double kick drum. It's way too bulky to take around. And I'm not Lars. You know, I'm not going into Seattle or San Diego and playing in a stadium. Like I need functionally and the compactability of a double drum bass, of a double kick drum pedal. That's all I need. Anything else is history. But yeah, I still enjoy writing music, even if I'm not physically playing a lot of the drum beats anymore. I still do play some of them because I have to actually like get on, like sit down on the set and work it out. And what we'll do is what we did specifically for Silliest was that I would go into the studio. If I could not figure out what I wanted to do for a fill, I would actually have to play with it. And then we would record. Chris would hit record. I'd be sitting down on the drum track or on the drum set and then play the fill out how I would think it would sound, and then he would translate that, and me and him would go in separately from we didn't need Mark for this. And we would go in and actually time out the notes digitally, so we could say, okay, what did I play here? We lined it up with my actual fill, and then we translate it to digital, because digital is always going to be easier to work with. It's always going to sound a little bit cleaner too. But I'm very happy with the system that we have, and with our new song coming out after Silius, this would be song number 11, I believe. This conceptually, this is the final track we'll be writing for the first album, which what comes up after this is that we go back in and re-record the first 6 songs that we recorded with our previous producer in the studio, which are much lower quality in my opinion than what we've been putting out the last year and a half or so.
The Fracture the Fault Line tracks.
Yeah. The first 6 tracks are Thrive, Path to Morning, War Infection, Chaos State, Sunder, and Stray. Those are all done at a different studio with a different sound guy and different producer, which they're great for the time, but they sound nothing. They don't sound half as good as the stuff that we've done with Chris. So I'm really looking forward to going back and re-recording those, and after the new song. But the new song, what we have for the new song coming up is very technical. We go back to playing. It's not a cover. Like we're not doing any more covers right now. We got that out of my system.
Once again, Freebird is on the table.
Yeah. It's gonna be, you're still gonna be waiting a little bit longer for that free cover. I wouldn't hold your breath for that one. But our new song is very brutal.
Sweet.
That was the ultimate challenge, following up a track like Ash of Gods, which is still our most widely acclaimed song that we put out of all of our songs. I was pretty apprehensive when it came to Silly's Fracture, because like, man, we gotta trying to follow up a song like Ash of Gods for us, even though we created it, was daunting.
Well,
Mark
Ash
and
of
I
Gods
were,
was it had such a Metallica sound to it. Like the
Yep.
opening couple of minutes before the beats really kicked in, I was having flashbacks to the breakdown in Master of Puppets when there's the dual guitar solos, and that was the first thing that popped in my head. And I posted to my Discord channel, like, guys, tell me this doesn't sound like Master of Puppets.
Yeah, Mark and I, we channeled a lot of Puppets. We also channeled a lot of Injustice for All, not the song, but just the album in general. And we looked at specifically what they did with To Live Is to Die, which is track 7, I think, off of Injustice for All.
6 or 7.
That's basically what we were channeling, was more of Metallica, but ultimately Mark is the one who came up with the main melody, the dun 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 dun.
Oh, yeah.
That's all Mark. And to this day, if you asked him what is his best riff he's ever written, he will tell you it's that riff.
It's an amazing riff. I mean, first I heard it was like just goosebumps.
It's great. It's absolutely great. It is his crowning achievement. He said that and I quote, this is his exact words, "This is my childhood in a riff." He said, "I've always wanted to write a riff like this," and now he has. And I'm very happy I'm very happy that people loved it. It's by far our most widely acclaimed track that we've ever released, which is surprising, because Thrive, up until Ash of Gods, Thrive was still the one that a lot of people associate with our band, but Ash of Gods really took off. And I'm happy because it shows how great Mark is at writing original stuff. And it also highlights, in my opinion, my ability to do arrangements and just pick riffs that go well together with other stuff.
No, it's once again, but then again, it's like any band, they always want to make sure there's always that evolution. And
yep,
I always tie it into Killswitch Engage, just because they're one of my favorite bands. And hearing Jesse from, the self-titled to Our Lives Are Just Breathing, and now then his newer stuff, when he came back after Howard decided to quit the band, was just like, what the hell?
Yep. Yeah, sometimes change is good, sometimes change is bad, but working with someone who is willing to change and to take a next step, or for better or for worse, is very important. Being flexible like that. And I'm very happy that Mark has the trust in me, because I'm ultimately the one in charge of what we do next as far as the band is concerned, but also I'm also the one who pays for everything. So I don't know if that goes hand in hand with stuff, but I don't. Just to be clear, it's not like I don't throw my weight around and say like, well, I'm bankrolling this. This is what we're doing. You know, if there's ever an idea that they didn't that they being Nick or Mark didn't agree with, you know, I've always sort of we discussed it and stuff, and ultimately me having the freedom of working with people who are comfortable with giving me the reins creatively going and being able to branch out and do stuff it's very liberating and it's very fulfilling, and I'm very, very lucky and happy to have a band that allows me to do that with them.
Now, for those of y'all in Twitch chat that are currently watching, you can actually listen to Ash of Gods and Silliest Fractured on his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Sinvicta316, and you can listen to the entire old Fracture the Fault Line album on Bandcamp. And if you do want to help support Sinvicta along the lines of his music and Word of Water's music, you can check him out at patreon.com/Sinvicta. So
yeah, no, I appreciate the shout out for it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. Yeah. So I just have about 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
So how did you meet up with Nick and Mark?
I went to high school with them. They were 2 classes above me, and we were actually friends. I was friends with them in high school, but we didn't really hang out. Both of them were in a band called Deep, and they actually did a bunch of touring. They toured with Machine Head. They toured with All That Remains, King Diamond. I mean, they're old school around here. Like they actually had a legitimate record label and everything. And I knew them. We were friends, but I just never hung out with them just because I rarely saw them at school. They're 2 classes above me. I reconnected with Mark. I don't remember where I reconnected with Mark now, to be honest. We didn't stay after high school. It's not like I stayed in contact with them, but somehow we reconnected. I apologize because I don't remember exactly how we did that. But we reconnected eventually, and by that time I just started doing the World of Warcraft stuff. And I asked him, I was like, hey, how much would it cost me to pay you to write a song that I could use for a PvP video? Because this whole copyright thing on YouTube is being like, I'm sure it's no big deal now. I get a blow over, but right now YouTube's kind of, this is back in like 2011. I was like, right now YouTube's kind of a stickler. Like I can't post copyrighted music up there, and they keep like taking it down.
Yeah.
Like, so, if I paid you like a couple $100, could you write a whole song for me that I can use, that I know that I will own and that I can control and put on YouTube? He's like, well, we can talk about it. Cause I didn't have any money back then. I was working a 6-day-a-week job running an IT management office down here. So I was like, not making a lot of money at all, but I had a little extra, and and that's how all of that started. It all stemmed, again, coming back from World of Warcraft and being encouraged by Husky to continue doing that, and taking that more seriously. All of that stems, the band right now stems from that time where I was like, I want to get more serious with this, but I can't use copyrighted music. And it's weird how things line up. Like thinking back and looking upon it now from a broader spectrum, seeing how everything has aligned to where we are now, where like, I have a Patreon that directly pays for a lot of the studio stuff, and having people still sign up and wanting to contribute it really is crazy how fate aligns, and to have that sort of that opportunity, and the rest is history.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then one final question that's almost just more of a personal interest for me.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, we all know you're a huge fan of Metallica. You're secretly Otto from The Simpsons.
Yep.
Metallica rules. Tell him, Otto, man.
Yeah.
What are some of your other favorite bands, whether metal or not? I'm sure your portfolio is diversified, as it were.
Yeah. If we're leaving hip hop and rap out, which is my second favorite genre,
Flava Flav.
No, never got into Flava Flav, but no, Metallica has always been number one. I don't even count Metallica anymore. So, truthfully, it's Parkway Drive. They're my biggest.
Nice.
They knocked my top 3 has forever always been Metallica, Alice in Chains, and then Megadeth. Parkway Drive moved into the #2 spot. If I didn't have Metallica, they'd be #1.
Oh wow, Carrion
But
is one of my favorite Parkway Drive songs.
yeah, Carrion is fantastic. I mean, I've loved everything by Parkway Drive. Without trying to sound hipster, up until their newest album, it's not very good. I hate to say it. I don't know if you've heard Reverence, but it's not very good. Although I will say there is a song, or not Reverence. I think it's called Severance, actually.
I think it's Severance. I haven't heard it. It's on my to listen list.
It's not very good. But if you do hear one song, if there is one song that I will say is good off the new album, look at a song called In Blood. It's 2 words. That's the best song off the album. The rest of the album is completely forgettable. It's nowhere near as good as Ire is.
Oh wow.
So, but other than that, Alice in Chains, Megadeth, Machine Head. I'm a big fan of Queen. I've just only recently discovered that. I've loved Disturbed for a lot of stuff. I mean, Lamb of God, of course, has got to be up there.
Oh, hell yeah.
There's a lot, a newer band, The Unguided. If you're familiar with Scar Symmetry, it was, or not Scar Symmetry, Sonic
Syndicate. Yeah, no, I love The Unguided.
Yeah, The Unguided is great. They do a lot of stuff, although their songs do sound kind of samey after a while. They're still pretty good. I'm a huge fan of August Burns Red. I like Tool, Pussifer as well. I mean, basically anything that Maynard does, I'm probably going to end up liking. I could talk about music, all day. There's so many bands that I'm just a huge fan of. And another band that I cannot, or 2 other bands I can't go on without mentioning are definitely In Flames and Soilwork.
Oh hell yes!
Both of those bands. Yeah, both of those bands had a huge influence on our early days of writing stuff with the Word of Water.
Oh, nice. All right, well, those are all the questions that I have. I really do appreciate you taking an hour plus out of your day. I know you're busy. You bust your hump. I mean, all the time. So I really do appreciate you talking to somebody, Joe Sixpack, aka me, to answer my questions. And I hope.
No, appreciate it. I'm honored to be here.
No, I mean, once again, you do amazing work both in music and on YouTube and on Twitch. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you crack your next milestone, man.
Whatever that milestone may be, I'll be ready for it. And I appreciate you. I don't know how much of this is secret knowledge or not, but Boogie Knight's been a patron of mine for a very long time as well. So thank you very much for directly supporting what I do. Nice. I always pay attention and remember that kind of stuff. So I do want to say thank you personally for supporting my stuff.
No, I do appreciate it. Well, I mean, and you do give back to the patrons as one final thought, because I know you've mentioned Chicken Dash, myself, and and Darkest Dungeon, and what's it called?
Lobotomy Corporation. Yep.
So yes, I mean, if I can give back in some way, and hopefully this will draw more exposure to your channel. That's that's my end goal, and also just shedding a little more light on the man behind the curtain. So thank you so much, Sinvicta. I really do appreciate it, and thank you to everybody who stopped by tonight's stream. Whether you're part of the Funk House, whether you're part of the Mosh Pit, whether you just randomly stop by to say, okay, who's this random person interviewing Sinvicta? Once again, I posted links to his YouTube account. Well, not hot links, but regular links to his YouTube account, his Twitch page, and his Twitter account. So thank you guys again. You guys are friggin' incredible. And until then, y'all have a fantastic evening or any